From the air, the desert confesses. What looked like emptiness pulls into pattern. Two long wings of stone, narrowing to a throat, spilling into a pen ringed with small, dark mouths. Early pilots said the shapes looked like kites, and the names stuck. They appear in the thousands, stretched across belts of steppe and basalt from the Levant and northern Arabia, out toward the Caucasus and Central Asia. Some are simple, two splayed arms that funnel into a single enclosure. Others are elaborate, mazes of guiding walls leading to courtyards rimmed with dozens of chambers, each a trap waiting to close. The walls aren't high. They don't need to be. They only need to read as barriers to the animals they're built to steer. Gazelles, ibex, onager, creatures that choose the path of least resistance when pressed by sound and motion. A few people lined along those low walls, with noise rolling forward in waves, could bend an entire herd. Imagine the choreography. Dawn thins into day. Spotters fan across the ridges. Runners take their marks at gaps in the stone. A signal rises, a shout, a horn, the sudden lift of arms, and the human tide begins to move. Ungulates don't leap the unknown if they can skirt it. They follow contours and comfort, reading the land the way water reads a bank. The wings guide them inward. The throat narrows. Panic concentrates. By the time the herd surges into the enclosure, choices have fallen away. Cells become mouths. Pits become decisions already made. When it's over, the valley holds a charged, electric quiet, the kind that settles after hard work and harder luck. For those who built these things, that quiet meant survival, meat to smoke and store, hides and sinew to mend and bind, stories to carry through a lean season. For decades, the purpose of these structures was argued from fragments: stone lines without context, enclosures without bones, theories without proof. Were they corrals for domesticated animals, seasonal pens for herders, symbols carved into the land? The desert is skillful at hiding its answers, but systematic surveys, targeted excavations, and the sheer accumulation of mapped examples changed the conversation. Tool scatters cluster where you expect them to. Kill zones match the geometry. The small cells at the edges are too many and too regular to be incidental. When the evidence piles up across thousands of examples and multiple regions, the simplest reading becomes the strongest. Desert kites are hunting traps engineered for mass capture and mass kill. Dating them is a puzzle with regional pieces. In some regions, like parts of the Negev and Sinai, many kites were built in the late 4th to early 3rd millennium BCE, roughly 5,000 years ago, while elsewhere the story reaches further back into the Holocene. The range matters less than the pattern that emerges. For millennia, across widely separated landscapes, different communities reached for the same idea: lines of stone, calculated space, coordinated action. Then came the discovery that forces us to think in a new key: plans carved into rock. In certain places, archaeologists found engraved stones that map nearby kites at a scale accurate enough to read as blueprints. They aren't decorative sketches. They show the wings, the narrowing throat, the enclosure, proportions aligned with the real structures sitting over the horizon. These engravings belong to the late Neolithic, while some of the associated traps push even older. If read as design drawings, they rank among the oldest to scale plans humans have ever made, older than the ground plans we usually invoke when we talk about architecture. Not palaces, not temples, hunting machines. That single fact reframes everything. To create a drawing that mirrors the world at a chosen scale, you have to step outside your immediate view. You have to hold the landscape in your head, compress it, and then expand it back onto the ground with teams who trust your vision. You need people to quarry stone, people to carry it, people who understand that a line that looks thin and crooked from arm's length will become a barrier that reads as solid when an animal meets it at speed. The plan is a promise. Place the rocks here, in this shape, and the land and the herd will behave the way we intend. The sites sometimes reveal a deeper layer, ritual near the practical. Shrines, small altars, carved figures, and even miniature models of traps appear within walking distance of some kites. It's easy to sense why. A mass hunt isn't just logistics. It threads danger, hooves and horns, through hunger, hope, and the labor of many hands. Ceremony might have marked the start of a drive or its end, asked for luck, repaid a debt to the animals, or simply bound the group with a shared story about who they were and how they survived. The presence of ritual doesn't erase the hunting function, it completes it. A system this complex rarely lives without a narrative to hold it together. Scale is where the imagination staggers. One kite can feed a village. A network of kites across a migration corridor can feed many villages, season after season. Multiply that across centuries, and you begin to feel the ecological weight of the technology. Concentrated mass kills could depress local gazelle populations. When that happens, people adapt, switching strategies, altering movement, storing more, herding differently, or turning their skills to other prey. The lines in the desert aren't just evidence of a technique. They're part of a conversation between humans and landscape, written over generations with stone and hoofprints. Stand at the mouth of a kite, with wind tugging your sleeves, and you'll see the craft hiding in what looks like rubble. The guiding walls lean into slopes where they must. They pass just below ridge crests, so animals following a contour line drift inward without noticing. Some sections are built with deliberate gaps, bleed-through points where people could slip in and add pressure at just the right moment. The enclosures vary, almost circular in some places, pear-shaped in others, key-like where a narrow neck opens into a wide yard. In cliff country, the pen ends at a drop, where gravity becomes part of the design. The variety tells you there was no sacred blueprint. There was a shared idea adapted to local ground, game, and wind. What makes desert kites quietly radical is the vantage point they demand. They are architecture meant to control beings that cannot see the whole design. The animals live only the next few meters. A wall, a line of moving bodies, the urge to turn where the pressure eases. The builders, by contrast, had to imagine an entire choreography. How panic flows, where edges must bend, how wide the throat should be, how many cells will be enough. The engraved plans complete that mental shift. They are the view from above fixed into stone, the bird's eye perspective long before anyone had a bird's wings. The story of desert kites is not only a tale of clever engineering. It only works when an entire community moves like a single, thinking body. No individual, however skilled, could run a kite alone. You need scouts to find the herds and watch the weather. You need runners to keep pace and throw their voices at the right moment. You need elders who remember which wind bends gazelles toward the western wall, who can read the ground for last year's tracks. You need children to carry water and laughter that cuts the fear of hooves in a tight space. And you need someone, a planner, a leader, or simply the community itself, to decide where the next line of stones should go. Every technology we build has a cost. Desert kites were cheap in materials, just rock and labor. They paid for themselves in surges, sudden abundance that had to be processed, shared, smoked, dried, and defended. They required rules about who got what and when. They encouraged calendars tuned to migration and weather, and they were visible declarations. Here, in this valley, on this plain, a community held the knowledge and the will to shape the flow of life around them. From a distance of millennia, it's tempting to romanticize this as clean and inevitable. It wasn't. A drive could fail. A wall could break under a flood. Winds could shift at the wrong hour. The line between feast and hunger is narrow in hard country. The people who built kites were not playing at geometry. They were betting their winter on it. That edge, between design and uncertainty, makes their achievement feel less like an artifact and more like a heartbeat we can still hear if we stand quietly enough. Hold one last image. Picture the carved plan of a kite lying in the sun, lines incised by a careful hand. Now dissolve that plan into the landscape it describes. The faint etch becomes a long, low wall. The splayed wings become shoulders of rock set just so. The neat enclosure becomes a yard you can cross in 50 paces. What begins as a drawing returns to ground, where dirt and stone and instinct close the loop. That loop, idea to plan to landscape to action, is the essence of architecture. And here, at its earliest, it was used not to raise monuments, but to guide hooves, shape panic, and feed people who had learned the desert's grammar and could write full sentences in it. Today, many kites are fading. Wind scatters stones, tracks blur. Modern eyes often see them first as pixels, traces on satellite imagery that archaeologists follow to the ground. But once you know to look, the land begins to speak. You can feel the pulled line of the wings under your feet. You can sense where the pressure would rise, where a herd would turn, where voices would crest as the throat narrowed. You can almost hear the moment the shape of the hunt took over and human intention moved through stone into motion. Across 9 millennia, the message is the same. Understand the terrain, trust each other, act together. Desert kites are the fossil of that message, thin lines that hold the memory of planning and the sound of running feet. In their restraint is their power. No towering walls, no grand inscriptions, just enough stone in the right places to bend living momentum. We live now with maps in our pockets and cities that glow from space. But long before that, people with nothing but hands and patience made the first to scale plans we can still read and turn them into machines that worked. Stand at a kite's mouth and look down its wings. You are looking at a sentence written in the oldest tense we know. We will move as one. And on stone-thin lines, that promise still holds its shape. If you enjoyed this journey, hit subscribe, share your theory below, and join us next time on Vault of Forgotten Mysteries, where the past is never quite finished.